Hello guys, today we will be talking about what if Naruto and Hinata were silent prodigies part 8. If you enjoy this video please like and subscribe. Now let begin. The days roll by slowly in the village hidden in the leaves, bringing with them sullen and dull times to those seeking excitement of any kind. Obviously, the biggest news ushering through the streets was the arrival of the newest Hokage, Tsunade. The slug mistress was put to work the moment she set foot in the city, tending to the lone Uchiha boy, as well as the student who was nearly killed by Gaara, Rock Lee. While all seemed well on the surface, the winds blew with unease and tension. Despite the passing storm known as the recent invasion of Konoha, more turbulent times were on the way, and the local ninjas could feel it in fine bones. Kakashi was one such shinobi. His worries laid with his male students Sasuke and Naruto. Apparently, the young Sharingan user suffered an utter defeat at the hands of his elder brother Itachi, and the experienced Hatake could sense the growing tumult within the vengeful boy. He's becoming more and more reckless, he mused, deciding that his favored novel would have to wait. If Sasuke hadn't run into Itachi, he might actually be stable. Guess that was just wishful thinking. The one-eyed Jonin hoped that he could connect with his troubled charge, but the boy was frightfully unpredictable. He had no idea what the kid was thinking. Couple that with the growing animosity between the Uchiha and a budding Uzumaki, an internal conflict wouldn't be far off. He felt a spark of chakra and recognized it instantly. That's the Chidori. Damn it, he cursed, knowing that his prediction had come true far too soon for his tastes. He leapt onto the rooftops and charged hell-bent for the hospital scene of a battle between two frustrated genin. Why are you doing this, Sasuke? Elsewhere, Kurenai had her own worries. Anko got involved in this, she analyzed, but how? I told her everything I saw from Hinata, but she didn't tell me anything. This was true. The Mitarashi seemed rather distant and answered around the Yui's questions, while pretending nothing was wrong, but the red-eyed woman knew her friend too well. She could read between the lines, but they were too blurry to make out anything definite. She seemed afraid? That couldn't be. Anko Mitarashi fears nothing. Her head shook as she abridged that mental statement. Except for Orochimaru, she's still scared of him a little. Wait, an epiphany struck. She fears him because he's strong and intimidating like no one else, so that would mean whatever she's up against now is the same way. But Hinata? There's no way it has to be someone else. Could they be related? Somehow the resident Ainans of Konoha that were somewhat privy to the secrets beneath their feet racked their brains for an answer that was too convoluted to understand as of yet. The unspoken mystery before them presented little more than assumptions and theories. Solid proof would be needed for anything definite to be determined. Little did they know that the events to come would provide such evidence. If only they looked a little harder. Ah, man, Naruto yawned and stretched out on the warm floorboards within the renovated prison next to his private chamber. It might have been crudely constructed, but he found the small room to be rather comfortable. Almost made him jealous of its inhabitant. Something the matter, Seekers? She asked, glancing up from the book in her lap. Nothing, the masked blonde returned, sitting back up to chase the sleep from his concealed eyes. Just a long day. She reluctantly returned to the manuscript before her. The Uzumaki smiled to himself. Ever since he returned to Konoha with Tsunade in tow, he had been spending almost all of his spare time with the disturbed girl. He would have preferred to locate Silence and do something with her, but his initial excursions to the hub yielded nothing. She must be busy, he mused, glancing at the young brown-eyed girl across the room. His frequent and lengthy visits with Shia seemed to be helping. She was becoming more responsive, although her shy stutter hadn't made much progress. The undercover genius also discovered an unexpected benefit. He enjoyed spending time with her. As the days rolled on, he often found himself looking forward to dropping by and handing her some books he had checked out from the Konoha library. It's like having a family, I think he surmised, not really knowing since he never had any relatives himself. Shia herself anticipated Curse's arrivals with nervous joy. She immensely enjoyed all the stuff he brought her, mainly the books. Her old base contained no reading material outside of mission statements. Outside of that, she always reported in orally, never actually writing anything herself. It was quicker but induced a major downside in the form of fledgling illiteracy. The auburn-haired girl was very happy indeed that someone was actually taking time out of their day to teach her this invaluable skill. This certain person was so kind. Naruto suddenly stiffened in place, glancing upwards a bit into the ceiling with a perceptible stare that pierced the many layers of dirt and concrete. What's that? The blonde wondered, a strong presence. No one. The Uzumaki glanced back down at her and smiled to downplay his suspicion. It's nothing, he assured. How's the reading coming? He's hiding something, Ayu whispered in the back of her counterpart's mind. Find out what it is. Shia smiled back meekly and nodded. I don't understand this one. She tapped a long word within the thick book in her lap. All right, he grunted as he strode over to her, and then took a seat next to her. As he began correcting her when she read aloud, his mind was abuzz with what he felt a moment ago. It's like some kind of tainted chakra, but it feels familiar. Why does it ring a bell? He struggled to recall the similar sensation, his azure eyes widening when he finally realized it. It feels like Sasuke's chakra after he got that cursed sea lie. Is that how you say this? The girl's voice broke him from his revelation. He leaned in closer to get a better look and nodded. Yeah, keep going. Noticing that she was trembling a little, he put an arm around her and started rubbing to warm her up. Unfortunately for him, he completely mistook the girl's reason for quivering. Shia's body shook every so slightly out of nervousness. He's so close, she thought, flinching a little when physical contact was made. Upon being all but cradled in Curse's arms, her racing mind continued. He's so warm, hair hard. I shouted, you gonna find out what he's hidden? The disturbed girl was about to respond when she reconsidered it. No, she attempted to establish her resolve. Don't listen to her, don't listen to me. The alternate personality shrieked, you have a death wish, do as I say. The girl's dominant chime-ins it faltered in the face of its counterpart's growing frustration. I don't want to outlive cause you won't be doing any of that if you don't listen to me please don't. Why yelled the secondary self then went on a rage against the withdrawn girl's mind. She was furious, angrier than usual. She taunted and downplayed Shia's entire existence, crediting the shy girl's survival to herself and herself alone. Said, disturbed preteen's eyes started to well up with tears. Maybe I was right? She had certainly never been wrong before. What's wrong? A confused voice interrupted the mental skirmish. She jumped, moisture building in her dull brown eyes. It's AI. She trailed off, voice blubbering as she started to cry. Suddenly, she was pulled to the side and buried in something warm. The tears halted out of shock, and their owner blinked as she glanced up. Naruto had put his other arm around her in a light hug. Come on, he said softly, it'll be fine. You're still here, you're still you. He frowned behind his crimson mask. You're still you? What the hell am I saying? Shrugging internally, he decided that it was plausible given how much he knew about split personalities, that is to say, squat. Still, his internal voice took on a morose tone. I wish there was more I could do for her. I hate seeing her like this. He expected the small girl to bawl her eyes out for a while, then probably fall asleep, but he was surprised at what transpired in place of this assumption. Shia was smiling at him, salty tears staining her cheeks. Thank you, curse. I'll be damned. This is the most progress I've ever seen in one go. He shot her his trademark foxy grin and replied, no problem. You okay now? When he received a satisfactory nod, he continued his unassigned task of literary teaching. In the back of the disturbed girl's mind sat an unusually quiet, aggressive personality. I can't believe it, I muttered, her voice hidden from the dominant self. She's ignoring me. She's making her own choices. If she was in control of her host's body, her face would be twisted in emotions she was not prone to displaying. Shock with trace amounts of fear. What do I do now? Endless seconds passed as the alternate self processed her situation. The very reason for her existence was being challenged, and there was nothing she could do about it until she recalled the root of the problem. Its curse. She would have gritted teeth if she had any. The next morning, Hinata woke to the sun shining through her window. Geez, I get a good night's sleep and I'm still tired, she whined internally. I guess I'll be taking a break today. She rose and prepared for her unofficial day off, mildly relieved to be resting from her strenuous self-training. Her lips curled into a smirk when she reviewed how close she was to possessing her own water-based techniques. A few more days of practice, and she'd have it down pat. She all but skipped to her hideout with joy, taking care to avoid the main streets and evading the extra pair of eyes watching her. Is that who I think it is? She wondered, catching a glimpse of a suspicious Jonin before easing her bloodline on for a moment to confirm an identity. Anko Mitarashi, eh? I guess Curse really did visit, the genius girl easily ditched the snake woman and arrived at her prized lab with excitement to spare. Shiori, Ichiru, morning. The reassembled Hyugas eyed her oddly. Their mistress was rarely in this good a mood. They instantly regretted having to ruin it for her. Mistress? Shiori began. Last night the forward sensors detected some intruders. Oh shit, the undercover Prodigies' shoulders slumped. Of course something had to happen on my day off. 4 people entered Konoha illegally. The female assistant produced a slim folder containing darkened photos, but 5 exited. I thought you might want to know. And thanks, she sighed while accepting the cream-colored document, still pissed about having to deal with potential intruders. She flipped through the grainy pictures, thinking, I need to install night vision on these damn things. Image of 5 retreating figures caught her eye, and she thought the shortest silhouette looked familiar. Any leads on who this one is? That Sasuke Uchiha? Ichiro yelled from his station, his perpetual twitch ever present. The new Hokage sent out a team this morning to bring him back. The intelligent girl's face lifted in surprise. She never figured the spoiled Uchiha to abandon the village. He had everything he could ever want here. Shaking her head to clear her thoughts, she continued with her standard questioning. Which team did the Hokage send? She didn't, Shiori answered with a cheerful smile. Immediately realizing her error, she clarified, she assigned Shikamaru Nara to assemble a genin team of his choice. The partially alive Hyuga then rattled off the impromptu squad's members, their unusual coalition causing Hinata to furrow her brow in concerned amusement. What to do, she sighed, wondering if this incident was worth the trouble of investigating firsthand. Any idea why Sasuke left? Ichiro leaned back in his seat again and shouted, some guy named Orochimaru? Orochimaru? Yes, mistress. The man appeared somewhat bewildered by his creator's shocked outburst. I'm going after them, Hinata stated loudly, flinging on her alter ego's gear as quickly as she could. She wavered as her new generator Laden footwear and shin guards caught her eye. Their primary purpose is to keep me from being dissolved by that energized liquid, she rationalized, but the charge in them is powerful nonetheless. It's real heavy, but I'll have to get used to it at some point. After 2 seconds of contemplation, she nabbed the hunks of metal and secured them to her legs. Sure enough, they carried serious weight, but nothing to which she couldn't adapt. Watch the lab for me, she commanded her assistants while rushing out the underground door. Silence made her way to the opening that led to the surface nearest the front gate that she knew of, and activated her Byakugan. A few moments of intense searching and she spotted a handful of chakra signatures. They were a considerable distance away, but she could catch up without considerable difficulty. The intelligent Hyuga carefully snuck out of the village and began her swift trek through the heavy forest in pursuit of Sasuke's rookie retrieval team. Naruto was a mixture of surprised, alleviated, and pissed. Sasuke, you ungrateful fuck, he cursed. The Uchiha boy, you had everything going for you, and you threw it away. A thought struck him, and he knew that this cloud did have a silver lining. Well, at least he'll be out of my hair. Who knows, if I can catch him with no one else watching, I might be able to kill him and take his eyes. That would rock. It would be totally just. When the Uzumaki first laid eyes on the enemies transporting the Uchiha, he was taken aback by the red-haired girl. No introductions were necessary, he recognized her instantly. Taiya, right? Damn, she's the spitting image of Takemi. Wish I could talk to her. His brain's logical side flatly denied that notion, but she's the offspring of Takemi. I'd probably have to kill her first. Hope Shikamaru survives. His impromptu team had completely fallen apart as each member detached to square off with the sound shinobi one at a time. The blonde was the only one left pursuing his treacherous teammate. Should have killed the Kagaya and drained his blood, he complained openly, regretting having to give up one freak for another. I thought that bloodline died off. Who knew? As the blonde came within sight of the target and burst from the forest into a waterlogged valley with 2 massive stone statues, a feisty smirk adorned his face. Valley of the End? This is where the first Hokage fought Madara Uchiha, isn't it? His grin grew to reveal ivory teeth and he muttered, it's just us, Sasuke, just you and me. Silence did her best to steer clear of the numerous battlefields, stopping only to administer enough aid to keep Choji Akamichi and her cousin Niji alive. Hope no one notices my handiwork, she thought. Nah, I only did the bare minimum. No one'll know. As she passed through the trees she felt her leg muscles acclimating to the heavy footwear. Man, my legs are gonna be sore tomorrow, she grimaced as she stepped off another branch, leaving behind yet more imprints of her steel boots in the wood. Suddenly, she noticed 2 beings heading her way. She masked her presence and darted away into a particularly thick brush in a rush to attempt to hide. It worked, since the duo passed by without giving a second glance. Was that who I think it is? Her brow furrowed behind her dull azure mask. What was her name? Tamari? Whatever. Gotta catch up. Hello. Hinata halted the moment she found a sea of devastated forestry, trees cleanly sliced up and toppled every which way. She leapt from perch to perch, careful to keep out of sight until her bloodline caught a figure partially buried under the wood and rubble. She approached the body and stifled a gasp. Holy crap, she proclaimed under her breath, it's Takemi's daughter. The prodigy knelt by the older girl and whistled. Geez, spitting image of her. All right, she cracked her fingers, let's see what we got here. The Hyuga analyzed the defeated enemy with bloodline eyes, noting all her injuries with deliberating care. She pretty much just got crushed, but she's not dead yet, she concluded. No way to revive her permanently. but I think something temporary might work. Silence placed her healing hands over the adversary and began working her magic. Slowly, the essential internal organs were revived, and consciousness was guaranteed, but it wouldn't last long. Taiya's injuries were too severe to survive beyond Hinata's miraculous technique. Wah, the crimson-haired girl blubbered as awareness crept back into her brain. A few seconds passed and her amber eyes shot open as she remembered what happened to her. Shit, ow. Fuck, calm down. Silence placed a hand on the doomed female's chest to keep her from attempting to rise. Where the fuck are you touching, bitch? Yep, that's Takemi's daughter all right, she thought with a bemused smile. Calm down, she repeated, and listen up. Shut up. Her breathing was beginning to waver and become heavy. She had expended most of her revitalized energy and was already slipping. Damn it, can't move. I got a message from your mother. A tint of startled anger flashed into Aya's eyes. The fuck? Mom? Didn't know the bitch was still alive. She was. I knew her. Do you know what her final words were? PFFT, fuck if I care, she replied harshly. She ran away a long time ago. God damn it, shut up, she shouted with renewed, if failing, energy. The foul-mouthed girl attempted to argue, but was cut off by the stranger hovering over her with a golden locket in hand. She carried this around, the Hyuga stated as she opened the fancy jewelry and held the contained picture before the prone girl, who stared at it with a curious gaze. Her final request was to see you again. As soon as the faded photo reached Aya's amber eyes, she went into a veritable trance. She remembered that day like a ray of sunshine piercing through a sky of darkened clouds. Funny thing, she never remembered her mother so clearly until now. Flashback. It was a big day for the young Reed. It was her 5th birthday. Her mom had promised her an awesome gift, and Taya was practically bouncing off the hovel walls with joy. Teu, a familiar rough voice called, "Come on, let's go get you a present coming." The child bounded out the door of the rundown hut she shared with her sole parent. She grabbed her mother's hand and started down the trashy streets of her slum neighborhood, unbothered by the general desolation of her surroundings. She had been around places like this all her life, so it didn't get to her like it would some people. She walked for what had to be miles with her mom's hand clenched over hers the entire way. Her young eyes gazed in wonder and curiosity as the scenery changed around them from endless ghettos to middle-class markets. The new buildings were so bright and cheerful and extremely clean. Here it is, Teu, the intimidating form of her mom said, aiming her head at one shop in particular with a gruff smile that only the 5-year-old ever seemed to witness. I know you like what's in here. Taya could barely conceal her excitement as she entered the establishment that turned out to be a music store. Kikis? She squealed, having picked up the choice word from her single parent. Her hand unlocked from Takemi's, and she started running up and down the messy but organized aisles in search of something she would fancy. Hey, kid, a voice rang out, breaking the young girl's starry gaze at a rack of small instruments. What the hell are you doing here? What? She was confused. Wasn't this place open to everyone? We don't cater to trash like you. The man aimed a finger at her clothes. Get out. Trash? The bewildered girl held out her shirt to analyze it. It was really nice compared to her neighbors back in the slums. It only had a few holes and tears, and they were all patched up. You deaf? The man grabbed her by the back of the neck and shoved her toward the exit. I said get out. He never finished that sentence. A steel-laced boot slammed into his face and knocked him back a few feet. His head reeled back with total shock adorning his features, as well as a few missing teeth and a bloody nose. The hell? Hey, the Amarive smoker took a swig of whiskey from a flask, then returned the container to her worn leather belt. She sported an unpleasant grin that screamed punishment. What's up? The man choked on the blood rushing through his nasal cavity, and another man, probably the store owner from the looks of his clothes, rushed over to him. Ryusha? He addressed the ailing asshole, then glanced at Takemi with accusing eyes. What the hell's your problem? I just came in here to get something for my daughter, the crimson-haired woman stated. That's it. You kicked my teeth out. The injured man sputtered. You touched my daughter, she returned without skipping a beat. I think we're about even. Now you listen to me. The proprietor raised. 3 years felt like 3 decades to Naruto. The passage of time blurred together in his mind, due to his indiscrimination towards day and night. The blonde trained endlessly under Jiraiya and, when the old perv was away on otherwise preoccupied, perfected several techniques of his own. The Uzumaki traveled far and wide, gaining friends as well as making adversaries as both the lovable idiot and ruthless genius alike. Many moonless evenings came and went, taking with them local crime syndicates and several choice rogue shinobi into the bottomless abyss, and leaving hushed rumors and whispered legends in their place. Occasionally Curse would overhear a muted word or two regarding incidents similar to his own, yet not of his doing. He always smirked at such hearsay muttered through the grapevine, his instincts knowing exactly who was responsible for those retold tales. Any time he was even confused for his counterpart when bringing down a decent-sized mob family near a coastal metropolis to the south. His grin habitually grew wide in recollection of hearing cries of a silent river echoing through corrupt halls as he quietly slaughtered its members. Stories of his better half were surprisingly abundant in the lands to the relative south of the Fire Country. Apparently she had been as busy as him, traveling permitting. It was with these revelations in mind that excited him the most about returning to Konoha. Sure, his old friends awaited him, and the recounting of his numerous excursions, but seeing silence again was most definitely the highlight of it all. The village gates came into view, and his moronic projection cheered with true anticipation. He was finally home. Hinata was on edge today. She had heard flitting rumors of her intelligent friend's return, and she looked forward to seeing him again. Of course, at best the most she could do as a shy introvert would be to hide in her oversized jacket and stutter out a welcome, so her actual greeting would have to be under the moonlight. She sat comfortably in her bedroom within the Hyuga mansion, contemplating the scant myths she picked up on her various missions outside the village borders. At 1.2 years ago, during an extended assignment in a large province southeast of the Fire Country, her sharp ears picked up myths of a cursed wind that blew in with the breeze and butchered deserving targets with brutal efficiency before melting into the night with nary a trace. Smirking, she knew the curse must have gotten wind of her feared reputation in the criminal underworld as well. She always laughed when rumors of her own personal assignments came back to her with ridiculous exaggerations, added. But still, if any of the few tales she heard of the blonde carried a spark of truth, she was in for one hell of a reunion. He's gotten stronger for sure, she knew. Kakashi waltzed home from his brief discussion with Jiraiya, newest adult novel in hand. Intrigued as he was by the book's unrevealed plotline, his mind still dwelled on his homecoming pupil. He recalled how the Toad Master informed him on Akatsuki's possible movements, but that group was so unpredictable that worrying over them now would yield nothing beneficial. That aside, I wonder if I should continue to carry out the third Hokage's orders? His mind wandered to the aged assignment. Odd things still happen around here, especially that ghost. The one-eyed Jonin passed a cautious Mitarashi while lost in his own thoughts, paying no mind to the snake mistress's unusual alertness. Anko glanced at the oblivious ninja and continued down the busy street before her. She was on a personal mission. 3 years had passed in her search for curse, to no avail sort of. While she never located the masked man himself, she stumbled across numerous clues that eventually lead nowhere save Konoha's now infamous ghost. Several months into her off-duty investigation, things started disappearing around the village. Small stuff, though, items like garments off clotheslines and food out of restaurants and kitchens. At first no one thought much of it, figuring a fledgling prankster to be responsible for the thefts. But then a storehouse filled with ninja equipment reported a break-in with a handful of standard gear gone. This incident alarmed the shinobi population, and Lady Tsunade launched a thorough search for the perpetrator, while performing flawless damage control to prevent. The following evening of the edict harkened the first and only sighting of the individual now referred to as the ghost, a small individual donned in a pale mask. Unfortunately, only a split-second glimpse of the suspect was caught during the entire duration of the alert. Further reconnaissance revealed nothing more, and the topic was pursued no further, despite continuous activity of the phantom thief. All that really went missing these days were small amounts of wholesale food items, but that never stopped Anko from persisting in the matter herself. She did so because she knew the ghost. It visited her every so often. It all began on a moonlit night a year after the investigation was called off. Shaking her head to cast off those memories, she continued on her way to the Hokage Tower in search of certain files regarding participants in the Old Route project. She had no idea why the ghost was interested in them, and wanted to know why. Such knowledge could have dire consequences, and she desired to be an active player in her home's fate. Kor and I enjoyed her date with Asuma. It was pleasant. They kept things on the down low, although her charges as well as his were infuriatingly clever at unraveling the ill-kept secret. The thought of her former pupils reminded her of a certain Hyuga. Hinata's been really excited lately, she recalled, must be happy that Naruto's coming home. A smile adorned her lips, and she continued on her way until an old nagging feeling tugged at her mind. Although she's been spacing out more and more these days, sometimes she doesn't even respond to anyone until they yell in her ear. It's like she's lost in her own little world. When did she develop this habit? As the Yui fretted over her subordinate, Danzo, Hamura, and Kaharu convened in secrecy regarding the return of a blonde loudmouth ninja. Normally, such an insignificant pawn wouldn't warrant their attention, but their associates seemed unusually interested in the boy. The elder shinobi wanted to decipher the reason for their so-called comrades' intrigue, so as to have a leg up on their mysterious partners. So Danzo, Kaharu began, "What have your agents found? Not much, I'm afraid." The old war hawk shook his head, "Only that our partners have a vested interest in keeping the boy safe, although their motives evade me. That's it." Homer inquired, mildly annoyed that several teams were expended for such little information. "Nothing more." Danzo sat in silence for a moment. "I do not wish to sacrifice more of my agents. My forces have already suffered enough losses these past few years." The aging trio said nothing, as they recalled the disappearances of many of the root affiliates. Roughly half of the non-existent ninjas merely vanished with nary a trace, leaving behind only the tougher of the stock. The decrease in membership left the conspirators in a weakened standing, although they would never admit it under any circumstances. And what of the strongmen? Kaharu continued the conversation. "There has been a rapid decline in their numbers since the sound intruders." He referenced a bloody battlefield discovered within the hive of tunnels following the invasion of Konoha, "but they are still around, although the number of them is questionable." Hamura's brow furrowed. "When did the strongmen's numbers subside?" "Approximately 3 years ago." And the Uzumaki boy departed Konoha when? Danzo froze at the implication. Could this be possible? Could Naruto Uzumaki be involved with the strongmen or even be one himself? "Perhaps we should watch the boy," the elder female shinobi suggested. "Yes," he consented. "I agree." A cascading light shimmered with a fantastic glow, showering the dull room with star-struck illumination. Amidst the impossible lights light a scene of 3 elderly ninjas locked in debate, the Warhawk and the Hokage's advisory council. It appears our associates feel the need to interfere with our duties. The sickly man in the dull azure suit adjusted his tie. "No, no," the calm and collected voice of his suave superior corrected, "they are perfectly within the bounds of their contract. Naruto Uzumaki is not necessary for the survival of Konoha. But if our other clients obtain him, then we have an agreement." He interrupted without a hint of rudeness in his voice. "Unless they renege on their payment, the boy is theirs. What they decide to do with him after the fact is not covered in their contract. Please," he chuckled, "we operate a professional business whose reputation is well known. Its literal interpretation of its agreements. If our clients wished for a specific outcome and can afford our services, then we will uphold the agreement. If not, well, I believe you have seen the outcome before." The duo continued watching the live incorporeal feed, and the thin man voiced another concern. "What about Sasuke Uchiha? He has not yet been delivered, and he is no longer in our possession. Did you forget our meeting already?" He laughed, not meaning to demean his subordinate. "Orochimaru is a former client who broke his contract. We can retrieve Sasuke Uchiha anytime we wish. Besides, he is already actively searching for one of our clients within that organization." "Ah," he exclaimed quietly as if remembering something. "Speaking of Orochimaru, one of his joint experiments with the good doctor is within the possession of Hinata Hyuga. Please assist the doctor in retrieving it." As night fell, Jiraiya stood atop one of the many spires within Konoha, peering over the village and enjoying the crisp evening wind. The past 3 years had been a real doozy with his blonde apprentice, and he took this quiet moment to reflect on his findings. "Well," he mused, "he's no idiot. He learned everything I taught him fairly quickly, and is near mastering all of it." A quiet breeze brushed against his face, and he took a deep pull of the cool air. In fact, he learned it all so fast that if he was so inclined, he could have had time for other things. Unbeknownst to the Toad Master, a rusted grated door squeaked open in the caverns far below the shinobi village's streets, spitting out a returning genius. Naruto looked forward to seeing Silence tonight. There were so many stories to exchange. He flew through the dim chambers, nostalgia emerging in his mind as the musty air wafted through his nostrils and dim illumination streaked through the stone hallway. It took less than 2 minutes to arrive at his destination, the hub. The familiar vertical chamber appeared untouched in his absence, and the blonde was grateful to see it unchanged. Curse waited for a few minutes, casually strolling across one of the many grandiose bridges that spanned the length of the upended chamber. Soon enough he no longer felt alone in the vast room, and smiled upon recognizing the arriving presence. "It's her?" Hinata shared the suspended walkway with him as she calmly approached the male prodigy. "Man, she looks so different," he mused with a bright smile. "Then again, I probably do too." Silence wore a familiar pair of steel boots with corresponding metal shin guards, though they possessed scratches and overall wear and tear. She also had a similar configuration on her arms, with the back of her film-covered hands shielded by small energized plates and grated steel half-cylinders that ran along the contours of her forearms. A form-fitting breastplate wrapped around her entire chest and upper back, with her abdomen protected by a snugly wrapped coil of segmented metal. Her head was now not completely covered, as her hair flowed behind her in a perfect braid, and her face was concealed by a mask of meticulously welded bulky steel plating, and some kind of thick one-way glass that hid her pale eyes, yet allowed her to see. Teen peered a little harder, and found that under the excessive armor, the Hyuga wore a somewhat loose dark leather outfit that would probably get his blood pumping if he ever saw her in it without all the metal. Shaking those musings from his mind, he noticed her weaponry, things that looked like they came from a science fiction novel rather than a lab. A familiar energy device was strapped to her hip, although it appeared a little larger than before. He barely noticed a sleeker and slimmer yin and yang bolted to the armor over her upper back, seeing as how it paled in comparison to the staff magnetically attached to the spiraling steel rope. His hidden azure eyes noted a gear centered at one end. Silence was no less intrigued by her fellow genius's garments. He appeared like a maniacal version of Jiraiya. His crimson kabuki mask and ensuing flowing mane of false hair remained untouched, along with his steel-plated Jetta sandals and ring fingers, but everything else had been swapped out. He wore a deep olive green jacket with the sleeves constricted by a series of golden seal Lawton bracelets fitted over his arms and held in place with miniature Velas red felt windbreaker light atop his dark emerald coat. His pants were a pattern of olive green and dull crimson as they hug iron and dull crimson as they hug his lower legs, constricted by the belts that held his armored footwear in place. Hinata's Byakugan snapped on, and she got a good look under his clothing as well, blinking in surprise to find every internal surface of his clothing stitched in ink with seal marks. Went a little overboard with those, didn't he? She mused, a gentle smirk contorting her face, but he still looks cool. Silence, Naruto called happily, holding his arms out in a welcoming manner, with a bright smile plastered on his face. Good to see you again. You too, she returned in an equally jovial voice and hang on, lem pick up all this stuff. He referred to his scattered weaponry as he created a few shadow clones to assist him. All right, he exclaimed after a few minutes, let's go. Naruto and Hinata sat comfortably on a worn couch in Silence's chamber. Over the years the girl had expanded the subterranean room to accompany for more space, and with good reason. The Konoha duo stayed up until the wee hours of the morning merely talking about the previous 3 years and their many undercover activities. They laughed heartily discussing stories they overheard regarding their intelligent counterpart and shared tactics whenever an impromptu assignment caught the other's interest. Also, they delved somewhat into their new techniques and equipment, many of which incited a few congratulatory slaps on the shoulder. All in all, it was a simple evening of two friends staying up late while catching up. What time is it? Curse wondered, is the sun up yet? No. Silence responded, while glancing at the clock, about another 40 minutes. Crap, he grunted as he stood, I gotta get home. I've got a test with Kakashi and Sakura in a few hours. Yeah, she agreed hesitantly, I need to get home before anyone notices I'm gone too. As the dual prodigies got to their feet, the Uzumaki noticed something about his better half, a kind of feeling he had not considered outside of his first evening away from home 3 years ago. Despite his intelligence and ingenuity, his lack of relationships left him questioning this unusual sensation. Deciding to act on instinct, he placed a gentle hand on Hinata's arm and locked gazes with her. Hey, he said with a low voice, it really is good to see you again. She wondered about the physical contact but didn't argue. It was a warm and comforting touch. Kind of reminded her of the night she resolved her choice regarding the male genius. Thanks, she said with a quiet smile, I'm happy you're home. Curse's gut told him something, although he wasn't sure what. Somehow, he found himself inching towards the blue-haired girl, while staring at her pale eyes. I never noticed how wide they are, he mused, it's like looking at the moon. Likewise, Silence was also lost in her close friend's distinct features to the point where she didn't even notice the altered atmosphere between them. He's so handsome now. Before he knew it, the wind user found himself eyeing the girl's lips. They look so soft. I wonder, he started pulling her closer as his head moved down a bit to match the blue-haired girl's height. Is this what I think it is? The pale-eyed girl thought, immersed in the moment. Nothing could be more perfect until a door slid open behind them, attracting their embarrassed and broken attention with a loud clang, while ruining the moment. The blonde thought it was merely those two freakish reassembled Hyugas he saw them off and on all evening. His head swung back and forth as he did a double take, bewilderment littering his face, when he saw who it really was. The person advancing from the open doorway was a girl a few years his senior with blazing red hair and sleepy eyes to match. She stretched and yawned, her garments barely withholding any secrets. Naruto's mouth fell open and his body tensed upon seeing the half-naked woman who didn't appear too alarmed by his presence. Morn and the female stranger yawned, scratching an itch under her barely existent shirt. This curse, damn it, the pale girl swore, clearly upset with this person. How many times have I told you to put on some clothes before walking out of your room? Come on, she retorted lazily, her crimson eyes adjusting to the light. It's just us girls most of the time. Sides, she added, aiming a casual finger at the blonde. He traveled with Jiraiya. Yeah, he turned around to avoid getting an eyeful as the crimson-haired girl whipped off her flimsy excuse of a nightshirt to don her uniform. Who is she? Guraza Nation of the Nation, the uninhibited stranger replied, cutting Hinata off. You fought and killed a relative of mine a while back. The blonde's face contorted in confusion. Who? Guy named Giza? He spun around, relieved that Guraza was finally wearing a proper shirt. You're with the sound? Nah, the Nation waved him off, left before I get back. Most of the family did too. But how? He stumbled over his words. Giza said his family was dead. It's a long story. Hinata hushed her friend with a finger over his mouth. I'll tell you later. Besides, another opening door sounded off in the room connecting to the catacombs. You gotta get going. I guess, he replied absent-mindedly, wondering who else just entered the extensive lab. He started for the heavy steel door with Silence possessing a devilish grin behind him. Silence, another female voice started while partially concealed behind a carried stack of boxes. I got that root stuff you wanted. Hey, look who's here, the blue-haired Prodigy said, playful smirk still adorning her lips. The arriving girl set the containers on a table to the side and turned to view Naruto, freezing upon visual contact. She wore a pair of small steel-studded boots whose connecting belts wrapped up to her knees and were topped off by a pair of gray shorts with a sleeveless shirt to match. Each bare arm was lined with a single string of basic elemental tattoos, and her dull leather belt looped around 10 slips of worm-like metal. She moved her hand up and removed her aged ivory and green mask to reveal her face, her crudely groomed hair fluttering in the self-created breeze as she stared at the male genius before her. The Uzumaki's brilliant azure eyes blinked wide. It was Shia. Curse, the girl squealed as she tackled him in a flying leap and squeezed him for all he was worth in an excited embrace. You're home? Shia? The startled genius yelped. What? When? How? She looked up at him with amicable auburn eyes and a bright smile. Cat got your tongue? She joked, nuzzling her chin on his jacket as she did so. The blonde's brain shut down for a split second to process all this. Wait, you don't stutter anymore? When did that happen? It finally went away a few months into her training, Hinata interjected, placing a hand on the disturbed girl's shoulder, which prompted the overjoyed kid to release curse and back up to lean against the Hyuga. Training, yeah. I found her wandering around in the tunnels a few days after you left. She's a real handful, you devil you. She winked at him. Shia snorted a chuckle down at this. All right, but wha? His mind couldn't think of anything more. Tell you what, Shia, the blue-haired genius addressed the girl between her folded arms with a pleasant tone, properly introduce yourself. Okay, she replied. As Naruto made his way back to his private chamber, Shia joyously skipped in front of him, while humming out a tune in accordance to her current rhythm, Curse is home, curse is home. The blonde prodigy was about as surprised as he could manage, but he still allowed a humble smile to slip by. He was grateful to see her again. Eyeing her over, he noted that she aged gracefully, not that such a young girl could really do otherwise. She's a lot more modest than Sakura or Ino were at her age. He analyzed the muted color scheme of her clothing, and those elemental tattoos. I think she's gonna turn out to be a fine shinobi. Amongst his observations based on her appearance, a thought popped up in his mind that made an extra drop of blood run to his face. She's really cute too. Couple more years and she'll be a real looker. Feeling his gaze, the disturbed girl glanced back and peered at him with dull auburn eyes through her porcelain and emerald visage. Something the matter, Curse? He shook his head to both answer her inquiry, as well as clear his head. No, nothing if you say so. A mere 5 minutes passed, and the two reached the Uzumaki's hidden chamber unchallenged. She immediately unlocked the heavy steel door to her former prison and disappeared into the room, while the blonde prodigy changed into those awful orange clothes he wore on his way down the protected ladder. A loud pull echoed from the brown-haired girl's room, and Naruto poked his head in to find the reason. And did he ever? Apparently, his young admirer took after him in more ways than one. She had sealed a ton of stuff into standard storage scrolls and, in a single motion, released everything from their dimensional containers. There were tin containers brimming with reworked clothing alongside small lockers stuffed with standard ninja weaponry. The blonde also noticed several towers of filed documents amidst a handful of scrolls as tall as the ghost of Konoha. Holy crap, he muttered, where'd you get all this? Over the years, she replied, I did a lot of studying when I trained under Silence. Hinata trained you? This intrigued him. Then can you build machines and stuff? No, no, she shook her head with a sheepish grin. I never could figure out how all that works. I'm really good at the stuff you do, is that so? He noted the time and realized the sun was about to rise, and he hadn't had a wink of sleep. Tell you what, I need some shut-eye. How about we spend some time together tomorrow night? Shia's face brightened at the suggestion. Yes, she exclaimed, leaping at Curse and enveloping him in yet another snug embrace. That'll be fun, so much fun. The undercover prodigy returned the gesture, a feeling of warmth tingling on the inside. He was honestly happy to be able to hold the sweet girl again. Curse, she glanced up at his eyes from his chest. Yeah, when you let me go 3 years ago, did you? She sighed deeply, her new cheery nature taking a sullen tone. Did you really mean it when you said you loved me? His returning gaze betrayed his confusion. I know I was weak back then, and I know you said a lot of things to comfort me, but was that one true? Naruto smiled back and rubbed her head with his hand. Of course, he said, every word of it. Please be honest, she pleaded, her voice displaying a chord of minor desperation. I can take it now if it's not really true, Shia. He pulled back, but gently held onto her upper arms. If I didn't mean it, I wouldn't have said it in the first place. I really meant it. You're welcome. He patted her head. Now I need to sleep. I'm tired as hell. The Uzumaki ascended the trap-lotted passage back up into his apartment, leaving behind a hopeful, introspective girl who thought, maybe, just maybe. However, in the back of the fledgling seal master's mind sat the second personality. Alia also carried strains of hope in her separate mindset, although for another reason altogether. Over the years, the alternate self had been twisted and warped into a different, almost unrecognizable entity, due to being ignored by the formerly needy Shia. Years of neglect had altered her, and if she could smile, a wild grin would be plastered on her maniacal face. So Ole Curse's back, eh? She commented inwardly to no one. Naruto arrived at his rundown apartment, sweaty and tired from his long day. Operating off a mere 2 hours of sleep immediately followed by a day's worth of training with Kakashi and Sakura who'd worn him out. Aw man, he yawned, stomach growling in compliance. I'll eat something then hit the hay. What the hell? Hi, a cheery Shia greeted, while seated cross-legged atop his bed. He glared at her apprehensively. How did you get in here? Trapped? Or she aimed a finger at the open panel in the corner of the room. How did you get past all those traps? There's enough in there to level the building. She chuckled jovially. Those aren't that hard to disable, Curse. You know that. No, he disagreed mentally. Some of those seals were custom made. No one except me has seen them. Shaking his head to banish his doubts, he changed the subject. Were you here? Silly, she cooed. Did you already forget? Oh yeah, he recalled. I said I'd spent time with her tonight. Crap. He attempted to argue his point. Hey Shia, I'm kinda tired, so could you let me off the hook tonight? Aw, she pouted. Truth be told, her surrogate brother's return was taking so long that she had already resigned herself to this fate. But it wouldn't hurt to have a little fun, she thought. But you promised, she whined playfully. Come on, he returned wearily. I'm tired as hell. Maybe tomorrow night? I don't think I'm doing anything then. Fine, she continued her mock disappointment, but only if I can stay up here tonight. The blonde said nothing for a moment. She's arguing with me? She's actually making demands? I can't believe it, he smirked evilly, wondering how far her resolve really went. Really? Why, honest confusion surfaced on her features. Because you broke your promise. I never promised anything. He was enjoying this. Come on, she smiled, sleep up here. Just this once. The Uzumaki grinned back at the auburn-haired girl. She really has grown up, he mused. Good for her. Deciding to break the jocular facade, he assented to her request. All right, but stay out of my bed. Things barely big enough for me. Shia smiled brightly and giggled. She got to stay with Curse tonight. Hopping off her former captor's mattress, she waltzed over to the kitchen and produced a handful of cups filled with instant ramen. I'll heat up some water for this, she announced from the adjacent room, and bring it in when it's done. Okay, Naruto grunted as he planted himself on his old couch, noticing that it wasn't dusty. She must have cleaned this place up before I got back, he concluded. First she cleans up then makes food, even if it's instant ramen. Damn, she's more like family than I thought. Although, he wondered, genuinely curious to his own inquiry, what kind of family member does these kinds of things unbeknownst to the undercover genius? Shia was beaming with similar thoughts, while waiting for the water to boil. This is so exciting, she exclaimed inwardly. I get to stay with Curse tonight? I wonder if you'll let me stay more often, if I make him dinner all the time. As joyous as she was though, an unpleasantly familiar tugging at the back of her mind reminded her of her separate personality. Grimacing, she tightened the reins of her inner being. I would not ruin this moment for her. Her smile faded in the solitude of the kitchen at the resurfacing memories of what her second self did to her after Curse left. At this point, the disturbed girl was able to effectively hold off the overbearing identity. Her control grew with her confidence over the years. However, the secondary Mincet didn't desire to be locked away permanently. Then the steam from the liquid's bubbling surface wafted in her face, breaking her from the morose trip down memory lane. She quickly handled the pot carefully and poured the searing fluid into the multiple cups. Minutes later, she and the object of her affections dined on cheap noodles and exchanged pleasant small talk as the brown-eyed girl snuggled up under the covers of her cot beside Naruto's bed. She drifted away with a content smile plastered on her face. I couldn't ask for more, she thought happily before nodding off. At least, not yet. Hinata was mildly annoyed. Her entire day had been consumed by a simple mission, and her team had already been assigned another one. She would be gone for the next few days starting the next morning, so she figured she would wrap up some minor calculations in her enlarged lab before heading home. A mute sound of metal sliding against metal echoed from an adjacent storeroom, catching her attention as she prepared to change into her public facade's clothes. Curious, she glanced into the chamber in question, and her pale eyes went wide with shock. One of the handfuls of corpse lockers had been released, and the preserved body of an old adversary Mosh lied across the freezing steel pane in the open air. Two figures stood over the crisp body, a sickly tall man in a worn blue suit alongside an apparently uninitiated middle-aged male in a faded and bloodied lab coat. Who are you? The Hyuga shouted threateningly, routing chakra to her limbs which warmed and sparked with trails of electricity. The uninspired doctor replied with a dull glance before aiming a sluggish finger at her. You thanks for taking care of this one. He patted the cold cadaver before him. Gotta take him back now. Once again, she stepped forward with alarming authority. Who are you? Her activated Byakugan noticed Guraza abandoning her station and sprinting by Shiori and Ichiru on her way to assist the genius girl. Our identities are of no concern, Miss Hyuga, the pale man addressed with a snaky lisp in his voice. We are merely here to reclaim our property. Property? Her activated bloodline glared daggers and suspicion into the intruders. Yeah, the surgeon-like stranger added, while casually scratching his ear. Gotta take him back to archives. Corporate stuff, you know? It's all a real pain in the ass. Silence. The Nashin dashed into the room and instantly locked onto the potential adversaries. She lifted her arms and, sliding her chakra-sharpened fingers across her wrists, sliced her veins open. Trails of acidic blood spiraled from the self-inflicted wounds and took semi-solid shape as they flew towards the enemies, only to enter into a strange glowing light that appeared in its trajectory. The life-giving fluid cut off as the indeterminate globe of cascading illumination quietly fluttered, then imploded, and Garaza swore as she withdrew her living weaponry. When the sudden light completely disappeared, the strangers were gone along with the mutilated corpse they stood over. What? The Redeed began with obvious shock in her voice. What just happened? I don't know. Hinata answered after a moment. She had recognized the businessman in the faded azure suit from the image captured on one of her cameras several years ago, but she was flabbergasted as to who or what he was. I have no idea. What did they take? Garaza regained some of her composure as she approached the empty oversized canister, healing her wounds with soothing energy. They took. She remembered the insane fighter from years ago, as she recalled his name, Mosh. She appeared surprised. Even after all this time, there were things she didn't know about her younger comrade. Never thought I'd hear that name again. Any idea why? No clue, the female genius replied, running the stranger's brief comments over in her mind with wide bloodline eyes. Wait, they said something about collecting their property. Property, yeah. As her intelligent mind wound down, you're telling me. Anyway, go inform Naruto of what happened here. There should be video documentation from that camera. She pointed at a monitoring device in the corner of the well-lit chamber. He needs to know about this. Got it. She began to go for the database where said visual evidence was stored, then glanced at her partner. You know, if you and Curse came out of the closet you wouldn't have to deal with all this crap that interferes with your work. I know, the pale-eyed teen responded wearily. I just don't want to. Not now. Suit yourself, she shrugged. She always wondered why her savior preferred to lurk in the shadows rather than gleam in the limelight, but to each their own. A few minutes into her new assignment of digging through the inner workings of the massive piece of electronic equipment, she figured some small talk wouldn't hurt. How do you think she is doing? The Hyuga sighed. She'll be fine, she's with Naruto. Yeah, but what about Aya? I still get chills remembering the last time that little Spitfire paid us a visit. I don't really know. Since it's Naruto, Shia will try harder to keep Aya in check. Good point, she laughed loudly. She's got one hell of a crush on him. Yeah, she giggled. Hinata always thought the disturbed girl was adorable in her mannerisms. But what if Iva still comes out? Garaza finally located the correct recorder within the behemoth of a machine. She's got some kindergrudge against Curse, don't she? I really don't know at this point. Silence returned in all honesty as she donned her shy persona's oversized jacket. The fact that she wasn't certain was a frightening notion in her mind. She has changed a lot over the years, but so has Aya. We just haven't seen her as much. Look on the bright side, she searched for the silver lining with a positive tone. As long as Aya doesn't surprise anyone, she shouldn't be too much of a problem. The Nation was in the process of fishing out the corresponding video cable as her partner donned the last of her clothing. Good point. Hey, she changed the subject with a mildly cheery tone. Speaking of crushes, how are you? In Curse silence. She peered up from her task to find her intelligent ally, hightailing it out of the sizable laboratory for the surface. The metal door slammed shut behind the Hyuga, and the blood user smirked as she shook her head and returned to her chore. Man, you and she are like two peas in a pod, she murmured playfully to no one. You both like the same guy, and are too shy to admit it. Danzo had never been as troubled as he was at the moment. To begin, a list of all the participants in his aging root program had been lifted from his private chamber in the Hokage Tower. The fact that these documents were stolen despite being well hidden even by his own standards was bothersome enough, but now whoever purloined those papers now possessed the names and corresponding information on all the members, previous and current, of his personal force. Secondly, the suspects of the crime on his hands were those of a dubious nature, no one he actually knew. A nagging feeling in the back of his skull told him that somehow the theft was related to the events surrounding Naruto Uzumaki, although he couldn't even begin to fathom how. Furthermore, the second individual on his mental roster of miscreants was the Ghost, an entity that appeared years ago, a considerable time after the Uzumaki departed from the village, thus rendering the uncertain burglar a potential third party. But on the bright side, his preparations for informing Orochimaru of Tsunade's Anbu forces were nearly complete. All he needed was a plant who could get close enough. The Uzumaki boy seems determined enough to locate the Uchiha boy, he concluded, knowing that finding Sasuke ensured the Snake Master's nearby proximity. And he needs a new squad mate. I have just the person. As the old Warhawk considered his shady preemptive measures, he felt uneasy regarding the blonde troublemaker. No, one subordinate is not enough. He requires far more attention. Little did the aging shinobi know that his partners in crime were pondering the same thing amongst other plans. Kaharu and Hamura had similar goals to that of their co-conspirator, the protection of Konoha. Even their method of operation bore resemblance to that of the disabled ninja, the best offense being the perfect defense. They believed Tsunade's easygoing reign would endanger the village and aimed to dispose of her authority by hook or crook. They even had outside help in the form of their undisclosed associate who never contacted them outside of poster two bizarre underlings. However, they were equally bothered by these strangers as they were about the strongmen who lurked beneath the streets of their beloved city. Danzo might have been willing to harbor a certain amount of faith in the concealed leadership of this shadowy organization, but they had their doubts. After all, their mutual partner agreed to assist in their noble endeavor without revealing his or her own motives. Dubs. Hilso and the strongmen, as they discussed the endless topic of how to deal with the mysterious people, Sten emerged from a shadow and calmly confronted the elders. What is it? Kaharu kicked things off. Information has surfaced regarding Orochimaru's location, the shadow user replied in his usual lifeless tone, and Naruto Uzumaki appears eager to pursue him. The aging shinobi exchanged glances, and Hamura continued, and how do you propose manipulating this information for our goals? You and Anzo wish to rule Konoha, correct? They gave the slightest of nods in reply. I see undermining the current Hokage's authority would be ideal then. Do you have a plan? Kaharu spoke, preventing her impatient former teammate from losing his cool at such an obvious fact. Disagree with the Hokage's wishes. She seems to favor the boy and will most likely allow him passage. If you were to confront her regarding her decision, it will only serve to anger her into making rash decisions, which could present her as unfit for duty. What kind of plan is that? The aging man hissed, "We would do such a thing to begin with. Danzo is taking a more proactive approach than you." The hooded man continued unabated. "He will assign one of his agents to Naruto Uzumaki's team and instruct said agent to hand over documents concerning the identities of the Hokage's Anbu forces. Such knowledge in the hands of a hostile will provide ample distraction as my organization takes care of the situation." Kaharu's eyes narrowed. "What are you planning?" She wondered aloud. Sten merely peered at her with blank eyes before breaking the seconds-long silence. "We have our ways." With that, he backed into the shadow from whence he came and disappeared from the cozy chamber. The aging advisors settled their gazes back to each other. The elderly man appeared annoyed, and with good reason. "I can't help but feel we are being left out of this arrangement." "I agree," she nodded, "but our own resources are limited in comparison. Danzo has his root organization, however dwindling it may be, and only a handful of the Anbu shinobi are wise enough to swear their loyalties to the village and not Tsunade. A moment passed as the retired ninjas considered their options. "What do you think he meant by 'we have our ways'?" Unpleasant notions streamed through her mind, halting her speech for a fleeting instant. "We should rally the shinobi loyal to us. They may need to disappear for a while." The mock doctor in the blood-stained ivory coat tapped away at an arcane console in the hopes of opening the blast doors before him. He punched furiously at the mechanical keys as numbers stretched across the cracked display, botching his attempts enough times to irritate his normally bored demeanor, while reminding him that code breaking was not his area of expertise. After a few more minutes of failed attempts, his efforts paid off and the huge rusted doors creaked open with an ear-rattling screech. He took great pains to close the entrance behind him. He wasn't supposed to be here. Certain protocols had to be followed in order to visit this massive portion of the sunken compound, but the faux surgeon detested ceremonies that impeded scientific progress. Whatever," he concluded while advancing calmly down an unsterile whitewashed hallway and picking his ear. The seemingly uninitiated man passed by countless stainless steel doors as he wandered aimlessly in the evidently abandoned facility. His qualifications for even being allowed down here were barely adequate, but his presence was unauthorized nonetheless. However, now that he was inside the decidedly chilly subterranean complex, he was merely taking a stroll to check the place out. He had never actually been here before. He stopped in front of a pair of double doors that caught his attention for whatever reason. Curiosity notwithstanding, he strode through the swiveling entranceway and into a massive cylindrical chamber that extended onwards for what seemed like miles. The place was freezing. He instantly huddled his arms together for warmth and could clearly see his breath in the stagnant air. Cocking his head in restrained intrigue, he approached the nearest of an eternal row of human-sized tubes that lined the bottom half of the monstrous room. Shivering a bit as he wiped away some frost from a miniature display attached to the oddly shaped container, he noticed readings stream across the monitor as it popped to life at his presence. He could understand the basic DNA prints rolling by on the frozen screen, but any kind of written language other than numbers eluded him. He didn't recognize the characters. Perhaps they're runes of some sort, he wondered, committing to memory the foreign symbols in the hopes that he could research them in the future and decipher their meanings. If it's got anything to do with genetics, this'll be fun as hell. He traced the marks over and over in his mind, and, when he became familiar with the repeating pattern, produced a small notepad from his worn clothing. Fighting to force the ink in his pen to flow, he scratched the strange words into the paper. PROECTGENEFREAKPRIVATEFIRSTCLASS. Naruto spent the next day as he saw fit, relaxing. Kakashi was supposedly wrapped up with paperwork for the recently reborn Team 7, although he was probably distracted by his new adult novel to make good time. So, with nothing else to do, the blonde wandered around the village in search of something worth his while. He had been walking a while when he started feeling annoyance at the individuals tailing him. "They've been on my ass ever since I left my apartment," he mused, "irritating little bastards. Wonder who they are?" Determining that the day was too quiet for his liking, as well as wishing to ditch his supposedly discreet followers, he picked up a few groceries and headed home. Upon entry, he felt the intrusive entities hang around before dissipating, but leaving one behind to trail him should he leave his home again. "Thorough, aren't they?" The blonde put his foodstuffs away, then, creating a clone so as not to extinguish his presence, descended the vertical passageway into his hidden chamber. He entered the cozy establishment and was instantly greeted by a young boisterous female. Curse. She leapt at him and nearly yanked him off his footing with an airborne hug. "You're home early yet," he exclaimed with a smile, surprised by how glad he was to see her. "There's nothing to do today, so I thought we could, hi." He hadn't noticed the second pair of eyes peering lazily at him. "Yo," Garaza hailed while holding up a squat cup slushing with a clear fluid. "What's up?" Not much. How did you get in here?" The Nash aimed at the auburn-haired girl, while taking a sip of the apparently strong liquid. You brought her here? The Uzumaki questioned the innocent girl, eyebrow raised in minor apprehension. No, she shook her head. I just opened the door. Then, how I heard you come here, the redite interrupted, tapping her left ear. My listening wires go all over the place in these tunnels. I can hear. She laughed. That's about it for me, though. My fighting skills blow. Don't say that, she interjected. You're really good at traps and stuff, eh? True. Hate to break things up here. Naruto cut the conversation short as he took a seat next to his adoptive sister and across from the blood user. But why are you here exactly? Garaza smirked and mussed the disturbed girl's hair. Just popped on by to see my buddy here. An idea popped into her tomboyish mind, and she decided to have some fun. And you, she added in a soft tone that was wildly out of character for her. Huh? The blonde was confused. I always wanted to meet you, she set aside the deep saucer and crawled forward, the famous curse. She was practically in the teen's lap before the object of her amusement started moving back. He stammered as he caught a whiff of her breath when she blew gently in his face. Geez, that's alcohol. Is she drunk? This is bad, real bad. He scooted back from the advancing girl until his back hit the wall. Her eyes started fluttering shut, and his face got closer and closer. Then her puckered lips broke into a wide smile. Gotcha? She exclaimed before launching herself back into her original position while laughing her ass off. Aw, man. She slapped a knee. The look on your face was priceless. That was so great. The blonde struggled to control his heightened breathing. He hadn't expected the crimson-eyed older girl to advance on him like that, even if it was in mere jest. Don't do that again, he ordered in a tone that combined a command with a request. Man, tough crowd, she chuckled, glancing at the younger girl behind her. Her jovial grin melted away when she saw the horrified look on Shia's face. Oh crap, I forgot about her. She ran her fingers through the mortified female's hair and said, You okay? The disturbed girl blinked, then nodded, hesitantly confirming her recovering state. Man, I'm sorry kiddo. The Nash apologized sincerely and pulled her younger friend into a one-armed embrace from the side. I forgot how you feel. So sorry about that. What the hell's going on here? Naruto wondered, absolutely bewildered by the apologetic display of affection occurring before his brilliant eyes. Hey, he stated, grabbing his visitor's attention, what are you here for really? To show you this, Garaza instantly switched into work mode as she reached into her satchel and extracted some kind of portable monitor. She presented the darkened display to the blonde and flipped a switch, prompting the screen to buzz to life and begin playing the incident that transpired in Hinata's secure storeroom. The Uzumaki dutifully studied the scene and intently listened to the exchanged dialogue, gurgling through the scratchy speakers, nodding in detached acknowledgement. When the recording finished, Silence ain't gonna be around for a few days, so she wanted me to stop by and show you that. I see. He was still wrapped up in the revelation of the strange intruders. As the questions popped into his mind, the blonde redirected said inquiries towards the blood user to little avail. She strongly affirmed several times that she knew no more than the Hyuga prodigy, and after a while the boy was forced to take it at face value. Could this have anything to do with those nosy bastards following me around? He wondered. Nah, couldn't be. They're only higher-up ninjas. He sneered inwardly at his presumption. Don't be stupid, I can't assume anything. Could you excuse me for a second? The blonde said as he stood and went for the vertical passageway leading into his apartment to ensure his annoying followers weren't involved with the bizarre strangers. I've gotta go check something. Be back in a few minutes. We'll be here. Garaza waved as the undercover genius scaled the trap ladder before turning towards her younger comrade. Yeah, Shia answered, her voice a tad too sullen for the Nashin's tastes. I'm fine. Garaza gazed at the girl, then pulled her into an embrace. I'm sorry about that. I forgot about how you feel about him. The disturbed female blinked with mild bewilderment as she peered into the older teen's crimson eyes. What? Oh, come on. She ground her knuckles into her acquaintance's head with her trademark smirk. We've been roomies for the last 2 years. I can read you like a book. Shia wondered why her former roommate was being so open about such a matter, but eventually she decided it was nice to have a friend that cared and smiled at that thought. But what about silence? She also. Hey, the cheerful elder teen hushed her captive with a finger. None of that. You two are my best pals, and I ain't gonna favor one over the other. Her smile grew ear to ear, evidence that she spoke nothing but the truth to the younger girl. I'm rootin' for both of you. The auburn-eyed girl gazed at her comrade and smiled. It was good to have someone other than Curse who cared this much. Thank you, Garaza. No sweat, kiddo. Familiar steps rang out from the hole connecting the cozy chamber to the world above, and she gave Shia one last squeeze before releasing her. When Naruto came into view, the Nashin grasped her flat cup of booze and cheered for no particular reason. Showtime days later, the blonde prodigy was away on a mission, something about a kidnapped Kazakiage, and the genius girl wasn't due back from her assignment for at least another day. Guraza was busy monitoring the honeycomb of tunnels with her extensive wiring, and Shiori and Ichiru were well. Shiori and Ichiru.in short, Shia was bored. The brown-eyed girl mulled around Silence's lap, wondering what to do. She had already gone through all the reading material regarding seals and the like, and things that the blue-haired prodigy excelled in didn't really interest her that much. The ghost glanced up at the clock and realized that she had wasted much of the day doing nothing, something she couldn't bear to fathom. If I'm gonna do nothing all day, she pouted, I want to do it with cursor silence. Maybe even Garaza? She paced the room for what seemed the millionth time, and eventually decided on a course of action. She would go for a walk. Of course for her, a walk normally translated into sneaking through the shadows, trying not to get caught, but this time she wanted things to be different. It'll be fine, she mused as she donned a dull long-sleeve jacket to conceal the tattoos on her arms. No one's ever seen me before, and so she went on a casual stroll of the village. She tried not to draw too much attention to herself, but such a thing is rather difficult when the individual attempting to blend in keeps staring at everything in obvious wonder and stumbles over half a dozen visible objects while running into an equal number of passers-by. Wow, I've never seen the village in the daytime. As she happily waltzed along the busy streets, not watching where she was going, she bumped into someone again. This time, however, it wasn't an adult, but rather someone around her size and weight. Sorry, she had chimed as she stumbled backwards from the accidental, run-in female in question, who appeared to be within the ghost's age group, turned and glared at her with familiar pale eyes. Watch where you're going, the girl said in a cold tone that thoroughly pissed Shia off. Hey! The auburn-haired girl yelled, I said I was sorry. Fine, the apparent Hyuga returned before muttering under her breath in the false belief that her inadvertent assailant couldn't hear her. Filthy commoner. Shia's brown eyes twitched, and she heard Aya demanding vengeance, and this time, we're not going that far, the dominant Mincit returned calmly, but we gotta come up with one hell of a prank. A prank? Come on, is that the best you can do? Let's whoop the shit out of her? If we do, then we'll never be able to come back to the surface like this ever again. It's gotta be something harmless that won't draw attention to us. A few minutes passed, and the girl's face split into a sly grin as both psyches came to a compromise. She followed the bratty Hyuga at a respectable distance so as not to alarm the target to her presence. Only a truly paranoid Hyuga would use their bloodline in public, she concluded, and she's probably too stuck up to think there'd be consequences. The impromptu vet casual chase continued until the marked female entered a less populous street and Shia sprung into action. Sprinting into an alleyway, then dodging and weaving between shadows, the disturbed girl positioned herself ahead the objective after passing the Hyuga brat via numerous shortcuts. When the unfortunate girl walked in front of Shia, the newborn prankster yanked her into the darkness and knocked her out cold in a single motion. Utilizing the elemental seals tattooed on her arms, the auburn-haired girl converted some dirt and water into a special kind of sticky paste and applied it liberally to the unconscious victim. Upon completion, Shia then moved the Hyuga into the light and melted into the shadows, all the while trying to stifle fits of laughter that sought freedom from her lungs. Hanabi woke up after a few more seconds and blinked hard as consciousness flooded back into her brain. What happened? She rubbed her temple, paying no mind to the fact that she didn't feel her hair. Did someone knock me out? It was at this point that she began noticing amused stares shot her way, followed by many a chuckle. What are they staring at? She wondered, rubbing the back of her head. The moment her hand touched something moist, she received a horrid realization and began moving her hand through her hair, which now flowed in another direction. Her hair now defied her gravity and reached. The blonde nodded and, after his blue-haired counterpart resealed the vertical hatch, walked side by side his intelligent ally to a radio setup. He closely observed as the teen girl worked a few switches and knobs, smiling at the pleasantness of the situation. She's so cute in that lab coat, he thought, toying with the notion to put his arm around her as her attention was focused elsewhere. His appendage rose and staggered back and forth in midair with indecision before eventually lowering back down to his side. This transmission could be important. This motion, however, was not lost on Hinata. Over the years, her bloodline had developed to a point where she could see movement and small changes in her environment without activating the Byakugan. She was surprised to find disappointment weigh upon her when the blonde decided against the intimate gesture. Her moroseness was short-lived though, as the recording finally crackled through the aging speakers mounted above the dual geniuses. Konoha, the message sputtered as the oral record played from when it was initiated. I repeat, this is a message to inhabitants beneath of Konoha. How you guys doing? This is High Life contacting Konoha. The recording ended, seeing as how the transmission loop from their. High Life, Naruto shouted, a look of bemused shock apparent on his face. So he did remember what I told him. Who? The Hyuga inquired with a cocked eyebrow. Who's this High Life? Someone you know. Yeah, he nodded with a bright smile. He's a friend of mine. I met him a little over a year ago while traveling with Jiraiya. Who's he? Lives in the far north. Oh, he knew Takemi and Taiya before they came down to Orochimaru. Really? Her interest was now piqued. How did you meet him? In a crack house. She stared at him flatly. What? She added with a tone to match her appearance. Yeah, he's a pretty serious junkie. I've never seen him completely sober. Let me guess. High Life. Yeah, he laughed. You got it all right then. Her interrogation continued. If he's a drug addict, then how did he zero in on this frequency? She tapped her extensive radio setup to drive her point home. Absolutely no one uses it except me. It's practically a secure line. He's a technological genius, he explained. Give him any piece of machinery or electronic equipment, and he'll figure it out real quick. He chuckled. I think all those drugs actually help him out a little. He once told me he could see the airwaves. I thought he was just a standard addict when he said this, but then he immediately tapped into Yakuza's radio network on the first try and flooded it with music. His brilliant eyes averted at the recollection, and he chuckled. That was one hell of a distraction. So is he a genius like us? Hinata asked innocently. Oh hell no, came a rapid response. He can work machines, and that's it. Naruto paused for a moment as he reconsidered his reply. Well, he can kinda fight, but I think it's drug-induced. Sober him up and I think a smart academy student could fight him to a standstill. Sounds like quite a character. So do you know why he tried to contact me? He shrugged. Dunno. Send a message back. Don't worry, he's harmless. Okay, she eyed him apprehensively as she attuned her equipment to the ill-used frequency and pressed the send switch down with a satisfying click. This is Konoha speaking. She decided not to voice her nickname. Come in. High Life. Do you read? Over. Static hissed over the line, and the Hyuga repeated her message with the Uzumaki leering over her in anticipation. Yo, a jovial voice suddenly shouted through the speakers. What's going on? Silence had no response for that, and opted out to watch the blonde lean in and hold down the appropriate switch. Hey, Nurin, he greeted with High Life's real name. Finally got your message. What's up? Curse, what's happening, my man? Haven't seen you in, forever. Yeah. What's up? You wouldn't be trying to reach me if you didn't have something to say. Of course, why does he have to yell? Hinata whispered to her intelligent counterpart. He's probably too high to recognize his own voice. Just go with it, he's a really nice guy. I'm yelling now, because this crazy chick's chazzing me. Nurin answered. How did he hear that? Silence muttered in concern. You talked into the mic, right? I can hear you loud and clear. Hey. Lem go, crazy chick. Ow. Sounds of scuffling and general brawling dominated the airwaves for a few seconds. Alley-oop, the stoner's voice drawled, followed immediately by a loud crash. What's happening? Naruto yelled. Who's chazzing you? Some half-naked chick in a trench coat. I think I shook her off for a sec. Hey, thanks. Is someone else there? His answer came, not in the form of radio chatter, but rather the lab's entrance to the surface shuttering open. A man who had seen better days spilled into the room and Garaza strolled in after him, the thick hidden door closing behind them. What the hell? Silence shouted at the Nashin. Who's he? Calm down, Hinata. Curse calmly restrained his companion with closed palms grasping her shoulders. That's Nurin. The ragged man glanced up with muddy green eyes that seemed to move independently and shot a grin at the familiar face. He stood and shouldered a boxy machine that appeared to be an amalgamation of multiple devices with differing purposes, while brushing off his grimy multicolored clothes. Yo, curse, he cocked a hand in a sort of half-wave. Damn it. Anko swore under her breath. Where the fuck did he go? The frustrated Mitarashi had spent the last hour searching for the odd-looking kid that had shouted Curse's name. She slammed a fist into a brick wall, drawing blood in an effort to promote serenity through physical pain. Calm down, Anko, she murmured to herself. Calm down. That guy couldn't have disappeared. He's just well hidden for now. The snake mistress stalked off, fuming that such a blatant lead-on curse had slipped through her fingers and at the hands of a junk. The occupants of Hinata's home away from home sat in relative comfort as they conversed with the apparent druggie. It turned out that Nurin came across something unusual when scanning the many radio waves emitting from the powerful ninja village and traveled to the source of his curiosity without a second thought. Yeah, there's some kinda weird airwaves going down around here, High Life stated in a wavering passive tone. How so? Naruto continued. He seemed to communicate best with the addict. Listen to this. He cranked a knob on his vaguely rectangular device that was balanced on his shoulders with his arms flopped across the top. He then flipped a switch down and induced a headache-inducing screech right next to his ear, wincing a little, but maintaining a weird smile. The switch automatically snapped back into place, and the noise went with it. What was that? The Hyuga inquired, adjusting her jaw so she could pop her ears. No idea, he exclaimed excitedly. That's why I'm here. What a bizarre person, she mused. Okay, whatever. Do whatever you like, but don't you dare reveal our identities to anyone. Understand? Gotcha, he chuckled, somehow finding something amusing. I mean it. She moved threateningly towards the older teen. Hey, no worries. He waved his hands with no sense of confrontation. Curse already told me no one knows about you guys. It's cool. I ain't gonna rat you out. Interesting choice of words, she thought flatly. So, the blonde spoke up, hoping to change the topic and lower the tension in the room. Where are you staying? Hinata eyed her friend. He's not staying with you? He shrugged. I've got no more room. Shia takes up all the space. He could stay here, Garaza suggested between sips of her seemingly eternal beverage. Shia doesn't live here anymore, so there's enough room for him. No way, the blue-haired genius retorted. Just because Naruto trusts him doesn't mean I do. I won't. I'll keep an eye on him, the elder girl offered. If he gets out of line, I'll kill him. Sides, she grinned. Sounds like he knows what he's doing. I'm sure you'll be useful. Silence stewed over the compromise for a few awkward moments. You'll have him in your sights at all times, right? Yep, she nodded. You swear on your name? I swear on my name. The Hyuga sighed hard, then spoke with mild apprehension. All right, you've got a deal. Don't disappoint me. Hinata then stalked out of the room to cool her head. A tense moment passed before the blonde released a breath he had been holding. Phew, never seen her that mad before. You sure? Iva's feet touched down, and she feigned a charged, invoking the blonde to thrust his weapon forward. The alternate Mincet noted the subtle signs of the Prodigies' dedication to the attack and responded by squatting deeply. Using her legs as leverage, she hurled herself past the misguided sword at the blonde with armored fingers, prepared to bury a sharpened string of wind into his diaphragm, and the auburn-haired girl suddenly spun in place and felt an iron hull grasp around her body. What the hell? She yelped in surprise, wondering how her opponent thwarted her. Uzumaki grimaced. He tried to avoid any usage of his advanced techniques, but Aya forced his hand. He applied a viciously weakened version of his strongest move, the 9 tornadoes, to the girl, creating a split-second whirlwind that forced her into a violent spin. The instant she was jolted from her attack, he wrapped his arms around her and ground the seal-laden bracelets chained to his limbs together, prompting the multiple marks to interact by releasing a coiled cable of reinforced wires and properly subdue the girl. To inhibit the captured adversary from utilizing her legs, Curse shoved her flat against the ground and held her in place with all his dead weight bearing down on her. His plan worked, but now Naruto was acutely aware that the girl's back was burning up. What the hell is this? He muttered to no one in particular. Alia swung her head at an awkward angle, flipping her ivory and emerald visage off her face, before glancing at the teen lying on top of her. Wouldn't you like to know? She said with a certain smugness that seemed to have become part of her over the years. Curiosity notwithstanding, the crimson-masked prodigy leaned up a bit and, bringing only one arm around, lifted the back of the girl's shirt up to find the reason behind the searing sensation. His azure eyes widened, and his grip almost slipped when he found an oversized seal tattooed across her lower back that was actually smoking a little due to the intense heat. My god, the trap girl's smile faded without dissipating. Looks like you got me. Guess I lost this round. What the hell is this? He inquired harshly. What does the seal do? Keeps me around longer, she replied with a now trademark sly grin that never left her lips. The massive tattoo began to fade, and the blazing warmth went with it. Aya stared into Curse's concerned mirrored eyes and, with a newborn smile, said, Let's play again sometime, Curse. See, you. The moment the ink mark completely deactivated, the normal sparkle associated with Shia beamed in the girl's brown eyes. Naruto sighed with relief and unbound his loop wires, but something felt wrong. He glanced at the girl and found her convulsing violently. Crap, Shia. He grasped her from behind to still her shaking body. Are you okay? The brown-eyed girl responded by lurching her head back, then vomiting big time. Curse panicked when she continued heaving and tossing up for nearly a full minute as he held on to her. She stopped and he said, Are you okay? Her head swiveled back wearily, and she smiled weakly. Curse, she whispered before her beige eyes rolled back into her head and she went limp with unconsciousness. Holy crap, he murmured under his breath as he pressed a palm to her forehead and noted her labored breathing. She's running a fever, a bad one. I gotta get her home. The faux doctor entered the ancient musty room deep beneath Konoha per the wishes of his employer. You called? He began with his usual bored tone. Doctor, the noble accent of the shadowed leader, greeted with its own benevolent attitude. I summon you to my office to discuss some indiscretions on your part with regards to certain protocols. Huh? His finger paused as it rooted around in his ear. Oh yeah. I went into that restricted compound. What about it? Well, he chuckled, I suppose I cannot accuse you of being dishonest. Would you object to informing me as to why you broke protocol? To further my research, he flicked the findings from his oral cavity away. I see, and you violated certain agreements to do so because I don't care much for politics, boss. You told me I can have unlimited resources and funding for my experiments as long as I provide you with unique troops. I figured there were a few things in those labs that might further my research. He gazed at him for a silent moment. Is that all? Yep. The shifty leader of the unknown organization nodded and paced back and forth before the length of his aged desk, before halting and clapping his palms together. Well, my good doctor, I am willing to overlook this incident due to your credentials as well as your loyalty to your duties. In fact, now that you have expressed interest, I am also willing to grant you unlimited access to the compound. How does that sound? He nodded with a barely interested grin. Sounds great. When's my clearance activate? Effective immediately. Gotcha. Thanks, boss. Be seeing you around. I got deadlines to meet. You sure that was such a good idea? Sten inquired from a severely darkened corner. Indeed. Despite frequent disregard for standard protocol, the doctor has continuously provided us with excellent results. His zest for science surpasses everyone I have ever employed in his position, and I believe he will continue to produce quality work, provided he is issued adequate funding and materials. I see, the emotionless shadow manipulator went with it. He didn't care to argue that point. You are curious about something? Yes. Sten never understood how his leader could read his blank face like that. Gar of the Sand was rescued by Naruto Uzumaki. Of course. And what is your concern? Does this not violate our agreement with the Akatsuki organization? The shady leader merely chuckled. Certainly not. Our contract with them specifically states our aid in procuring the essential elements required to activate their weapon. The carriers themselves are of no concern. The hooded man gave the smallest of nods in understanding. I see. Is there something else? Yes. I was under the impression that our organization was in control of all superweapons. How is it that this group of criminals got a hold of theirs? The leader's eyes narrowed ever so slightly, but his smile wavered not. He noted how his subordinate did not assume the Akatsuki built their weapon, but rather acquired it. It must be because of his own weapon, he concluded, thinking of the life-sapping blade his underling wielded. They stumbled upon it. Sten cocked an eyebrow in a rare show of emotion. Stumbled upon it, yes. They were rather fortunate. Do you not agree? He nodded. Arguing with the mastermind of all things was out of the question. I shall take my leave, he announced abruptly before departing from the room via the heavy shadows. The head of the mysterious organization leaned against his desk and smirked at the fond memories dredged up by the fresh conversations. He reminisced about the Akatsuki's earth-shattering weapon. They're good. Her hand moved back and grasped the bisected staff weapon. You? He grinned wildly. Couldn't be better. With that, he rushed forward while unsealing the first of many weapons from one of the bulky bracelets chained to his arm. Hinata met him halfway with a solid clunk of her unopened shaft of a double-tip spear, the weight of the weapon hating the newly released human-sized shuriken hovering over the blonde's battle jewelry. With a flip of the wrist, the Hyuga spun the staff around her open hand, and the device flung open, its opposing blades snapping outwards as the shaft came to its full length almost twice Silence's height. Curse abandoned the oversized ninja star as he leapt away and flung his right arm at the thing, invoking a salvo of bladed yo-yos from his rings. The lethal playthings wrapped around the discarded weapon and, with a gust of chakra-enhanced wind, twisted to put a deadly spin on the stationary shuriken. The blue-haired prodigy jabbed her lengthened spear into the center of the rapidly rotating mass, and electricity blasted from the miniature generators hidden beneath the grated steel over her forearms, sending a massive shockwave down the yo-yo's wires. Curse cut off the fatal toy's metal cords, avoiding the counterattack. He planted his armored feet into the stone ground and, straightening his back and bending his knees, shoved his open palms forward. A blast of wind ensued and erupted into flames when he blew a basic fire technique into the overbearing gust. The miniature tornado of conflagration spiraled towards the Hyuga only to be counteracted by an explosion of water that had, in an instant, formed a perfect sphere in midair as the moisture in the air got sucked inwards before blasting out. Lightning danced between the droplets, and both geniuses were taken aback by their counterparts' usage of opposing elemental chakra. Hinata mused, mixing fire into wind to create a stronger reaction. And those weren't even high-level techniques, water and lightning. The blonde smirked, and she's using all those generators to substitute for chakra. That's freaking brilliant. And so the dual geniuses continued their mounting skirmish, the strength of their many untried techniques increasing with every attack and counterattack. Eventually, Curse's expended weaponry stuck into the stone surfaces of the vertical cavern, soaked and sparking from Hinata's unique chakra manipulations, while Silence's multiple generators buzzed angrily from overuse, and her heavy armor bore a few new scorched scratches from Naruto's combined fire and wind techniques. It seemed their understanding of elemental chakra was rather advanced and rivaled the other. They could be at this all day. The Konoha duo came to the same conclusion simultaneously. Specialized weaponry. Their techniques naturally neutralize the other, and their varied strengths balanced out in the long run. She's gotten physically stronger, the blonde genius analyzed, almost as good as me in close combat. He smiled internally. Silence had definitely improved at hand-to-hand warfare. She was almost as good as him almost. However, her overdeveloped devices bridge that gap with power to spare. He's got more techniques and weapons than me, the blue-haired prodigy knew. His stamina is still as inhuman as ever, too. Despite her friend's advantages, however, her lips cracked a smile behind her steel and glass mask. Technology and knowledge was on her side. Naruto unsealed his favorite sword, his modified ninjato, and rushed forward in a blur of motion. His blade glowed brilliantly with thousands of indentations that, with proper configurations of chakra, could potentially form any seal imaginable. Hinata intercepted the bright blade with her extended shaft of a spear, though her opponent was close enough to touch her, without even fully extending an arm. She shoved her weapon into the struggling sword and shot her free hand forward, as Curse did the same. At once, both geniuses grasped the bottom of their adversary's mask and yanked up to reveal the other's face. Noting that the prodigy's face opposite one another was beaming, both combatants relaxed their grips on the supercharged weapons before swinging their arms around each other in a strong bear hug. Blonde laughed loudly. "Man, I missed you." She giggled in response. "I missed you, too." Both were cackling and embracing each other like old drinking buddies that had fallen out of touch until recently. After a few moments of the friendly gesture, they pulled back with smiles undying. "Come on, follow me," the Hyuga ordered jovially. "We've got a lot to catch up on." Naruto arrived home approximately a week after his departure to the Sand Village. His team, along with Guy and his compatriots as well as an elder from the foreign ninja city, had successfully rescued Gaara from the Akatsuki, literally pulling him from the clenched jaws of death. During this mission, the blonde noticed a few things that pointed to issues that might surface in his near future. Somehow, Kakashi had come into possession of the next evolution of his grafted-on eye, the Mangekyou Sharingan. "I've got no idea how he gained it," the undercover prodigy concluded, "but if someone like Kakashi can do it, then that means Sasuke'll probably obtain it too. If only I knew how it worked." As the Uzumaki considered the strength of this reinvigorated bloodline, such musings led him to take the Akatsuki opponent's might into consideration. That bomb user guy carrying Gaara didn't last very long. "I'm disappointed, but somehow I don't think he was particularly powerful." His brilliant azure eyes narrowed as the logical portion of his brain reminded him of the dangers of assumption. "Then again, we never found a body. I don't care if it's that space-time distortion or whatever he calls it." He had a basic idea of the new Sharingan's abilities, but I need to see things with my own eyes before believing them. That final notion reminded him of the selflessness he had witnessed from the previously crotchety Chiyo. Never thought such a life-giving technique existed. No wonder it was declared forbidden. Despite his true professionalism, he frowned to no one in particular, grateful that the old woman exchanged her receding life for a friend. Whether such an action redeemed her of her past transgressions or not, he didn't know. But he was thankful nonetheless. Her sacrifice would assuredly pave the road to great things in the future. After reporting the successful assignment at Tsunade, Naruto embarked on a casual stroll throughout his hometown. The sun was warm in the cloudless sky, and the breezes cool in the summer air. This was a day to spend outdoors. "You know," he wondered as he walked the streets, "I should go get Shier Hinata. It's too nice of a day to spend it alone, yo." A bored voice spoke from behind him, eliciting a flinch from the undercover genius. The demon container's head spun around with alert azure eyes to find an older teen with brilliant crimson hair staring back at him. "Garaza," he hissed, "what the hell are you doing out here?" "Getting a drink," she replied with a lax tone, cocking the liquid container in her hand to confirm her alibi. "You?" He eyed her suspiciously, curious as to how she could traverse the ninja village in broad daylight without any form of protection for her identity. "Taking a walk." "Hold on, why are you out here again?" he repeated with confusion lacing his tone, not really buying such a lame excuse. I just told you, gettin' a drink. You goin' deaf on me, his features scrunched up in childish apprehension. Never mind, he sighed while shaking his head, just never mind. He continued on his stroll, knowing that any outward familiarity with the foreign girl would garner suspicion amongst the natives. Oh yeah, the Nation recalled something and walked briskly until she reached Curse's side. Silence got back the day after you left. Seems like she picked up some kinda weird radio chatter. She wants you to hear it. The blonde sunshine hair bounced as he nodded ever so slightly, and he parted ways with the carefree blood user. His head hung between his shoulders and he muttered, so much for a peaceful day. Hinata was busy puzzling over the strangers that had invaded her lab to no avail. Damn it, her brilliant mind exclaimed out of frustration, there's nothing on these guys. Nothing at all. No shinobi or civilian registration, no identities, no mention of them whatsoever. The closest thing to an identity was when I first saw that businessman talking with Danzo a couple years ago before my camera went dead. That thought struck her. Danzo, he's connected to them somehow. Now the only question is how the cogs turning in her mind ground to a halt upon hearing a loud clang at the heavy door leading to the subterranean complex. She strode over to the entrance and, checking the monitor connected to the concealed camera, affirmed her visitor to be Naruto. With a small smirk she released the massive bolts that locked the hunk of steel in place, and the barricade rolled to the side. Hey Naruto, the Hyuga greeted with a widening smile. What brings you by? Not much, he replied as he stepped through the opening. While removing his crimson visage, Garaza said you wanted to see me, HM. She blinked. Naruto found it hard to swallow that the blood user seemed so accepting of the stranger, while his intelligent counterpart was understandably wary. He was about to voice his concern when the loud clanging of the door leading to the hive system rang out as the steel barricade opened then shut. Moments later, Shia entered the room and greeted everyone casually. Hello. High Life peered up while blinking away his sudden confusion and leaned forward, carefully observing the recently arrived girl with ever-widening eyes. Holy crap, he whispered, it's a dog with two heads. The disturbed girl easily heard this and took immediate offense. I am not a dog. Oh my god. Nuren shouted in panic as he fell backwards and flipped over in a single motion before flattening himself against the far wall. It took Sakura sat in her room contemplating her wavering thoughts. Ever since Naruto revealed to her that the nine-tailed fox resided within him, she felt some kind of infinite sorrow regarding her teammate. He's been so alone all this time, she knew, and I never did anything to help. I even treated him like garbage just like everybody else. What kind of person does that make me? She shook her overly pink head to chase those notions away. No. That was then, this is now. I can't change the past, but maybe I can change the future. Change who I am. Change, her eyes gazed down as she tried not to admit her next mental phrase to herself and failed. Change how I see him. Her downcast gaze shifted to the window, and she stared at the late afternoon sun as it bid the day farewell. Could it be? She muttered. My feelings have changed as the sun set on the shinobi village. The Uzumaki spent the waning daylight hours with the person he acknowledged as both an intellectual equal and a friend. The blonde immensely enjoyed being in Hinata's presence, although his bright mind couldn't comprehend the warm sensation he felt whenever he did so. Still, he enjoyed it nonetheless. They sat atop the Hokage monument in their plain clothes, while watching the Earth's star dip into the horizon. This time they felt no need to conceal their identities. Anyone was allowed atop the stone tributes to past and present head ninjas. The warmth exuded from the sinking orb melted into the air and prompted the hidden male genius to do something he wouldn't dare in public. He draped his arm across the Hyuga and grasped her opposing shoulder with his palm. He was a tad nervous at doing so, but something told him that it was appropriate. Surprisingly, the blue-haired girl returned the gesture by leaning into him and resting her head against his torso. At that moment, Curse's heart leapt into his throat. The same organ within silence was also beating like mad. She hadn't expected the object of her affections to act in such an intimate manner, but she accepted it with a small blush tinting her features alongside a humble smile. But while she nuzzled herself against the boy, a small part of her brain reminded her that she was not the only girl vying for the blonde's heart. That's right, she thought, Shia likes him, but so do I. I want him to choose me, but if he chooses her, she'll also be good for him. I know it's selfish, but I want the best for him. We all deserve a little happiness, right? Unbeknownst to her, Naruto was also having disrupted thoughts, albeit of a differing variety. This is nice, she's such a nice girl. I've got to tell her about the fox at some point, but what if she freaks and treats me like everyone else does? This train of thought might have been obvious to him, but the demon sealed within him was his singular point of emotional weakness. When it came to the evil force, his mind ventured into unfounded irrationality. I don't want to lose her, but I can lie to her. He glanced down at her face to find the fading sunlight shining in her pupil-lesser eyes, the natural illumination dancing in her pale eyes. His arm instinctively pulled her a fraction of an inch closer and he concluded, "It tell her someday. It can wait for now. Curse," Shia called to the blonde within his apartment, already dressed and ready to embark on her nightly excursion. "Hurry up," she cooed excitedly. "Give him a minute," Naruto whined as he donned the finishing touches of his alter ego's uniform. He had promised it. Shoes. He wrapped the straps around his lower legs and secured them, anchoring his steel-plated Jetta sandals to his feet. "All right, let's go." "Yay." She leapt victoriously in the air, then settled her faded emerald and ivory visage over her face, as the object of her affections did the same. The masked duo propped their feet against the windowsill and simultaneously leapt through the open into the sleeping city. The Uzumaki followed Shia as she bounced from rooftop to rooftop. He was merely tagging along on this nocturne outing. The brown-eyed girl bounded through the village in the moonlight hours on a regular basis. As they sailed through the crisp wind, the blonde genius eyed the girl beaming behind her mask and thought, "She's so happy. I can tell. Looks like Hinata trained her well, too. She can really move." He carefully observed the ghost as she planted her feet haphazardly on both horizontal and vertical surfaces alike, before pushing off with a certain grace that was reminiscent of a certain Hyuga. Curse bared his teeth in a wide smile. "She looks really cute, too." Meanwhile, Shia was on cloud nine regarding her situation. She celebrated inwardly. "I'm on a date with Curse. This is so exciting." She couldn't help but dance around the blonde in wide arcs, her extreme bemusement leaking at the sieves. In her mind, the standard outing was but another step towards getting closer to Curse, a dream so girly that she couldn't help but bask in the warm and fuzzy feeling beating in her chest. "This feels like a dream," she mused happily. "I get to be with Curse." A daring thought struck her, and she stopped atop a roof within a clearing concealed by a variable junkyard of pipework and air ducts. The blonde landed behind her, and she turned to face him. "I just have to tell him," she concluded mentally, her heart pounding so hard that it felt it would burst from her chest. "Just say it, Shia. It's only 3 little words. What's up?" Naruto wondered aloud. We stop." Her knees shook unconsciously before her mind forced them still. "Seekers," she stuttered, a sure sign that something big was about to go down. The Uzumaki merely cocked his head. "Yeah?" he asked, concern about the sudden nervousness pouring forth from the auburn-haired girl before him lining his tone. "She looks worked up. Is there something wrong?" She continued, "There's something I need to tell you." "Wait a minute." He began to piece the puzzle together. This couldn't be. She gulped to reaffirm her waning confidence. "Curse," she spoke calmly and softly with a hint of anxiety. The world around her suddenly felt distant while her head became light as a balloon. "Just say it." She berated herself inwardly, taking no notice of the fact that her hands maneuvered their corresponding digits into the restored finger guards lining her belt. But while the disturbed girl didn't seem to be aware of what was happening, Naruto's azure eyes were now locked onto her conflicting movements as his brow furrowed in cautious intrigue. "Shia," he began apprehensively. "What's wrong?" That phrase snapped the girl back into reality and she tried to gasp, only to find she couldn't. "What's going on?" Her mind panicked as her now armored hand reached for her deceased brother's mask. "Why can't I move?" Her disobedient palm flipped her faded visage to the side, and she would have stiffened in horror if she could, finally realizing what was occurring. "No. No." Curse's eyes narrowed when the girl before him partially removed her mask and stared face to face with him. The blonde then understood why Shia was suddenly acting odd, now that he had a clear view of facial features he hadn't yet encountered since his return to Konoha. "Yo, Curse." The girl's sly grin parted as they spoke, and her auburn eyes angled inwards to form an insidious yet beguiled gaze. "It's been a while." "Same to you," he returned calmly while shifting his weight. Jiraiya sat atop one of the numerous towers that night. He happened to be stopping by in the village this particular evening, and he was busy indulging in his guilty pleasure, enjoying the night air from high buildings. "Everyone knows I'm the greatest pervert alive," he mused, "but absolutely no one must know about this. They'll think I'm some old fart." As the crisp breeze fluttered through his graying mane and weathered clothing, his eyes wandered over the city to take in the serenity therein. Peaceful tonight, but then 2 objects moving at breakneck speed in the distance graced his vision. "Unless you count that," he added without too much worry evident in his mind. Instead, the Toadmaster looked on as the larger of the 2 masked individuals continuously pulled weapons of all varieties out of nowhere to attack the smaller opponent, who merely bounded off walls and roofs, as if made of rubber. Then the little silhouette would maneuver past the airborne weaponry and towards the bigger foe in seemingly impossible arcs that sort of reminded the aging shinobi of the footwork present in the traditional Hyuga close combat style. After an eternity of half a minute, Juri's eyes finally adjusted to the swift movements of the dueling combatants, and he smirked upon noticing the one with the large man of false hair that appeared familiar. He chuckled, "It really does look a little like me." Naruto was having a tough time dealing with Aya. It wasn't that he couldn't defeat her, far from it. He possessed at least half a dozen techniques that could eradicate the girl in one fell swoop, guaranteed. Rather, he only wanted to subdue her, but the fanatical split personality, having access to the sum total of Shia's knowledge, was fierce enough to be a worthy opponent with respect to the situation. Alia, of course, held nothing back. She knew Curse wouldn't inflict a death blow on her, and doubted he could even bring himself to permanently harm her, so she gave it her all, kind of. The alternate means it decided on a whim to keep things quiet. After all, what good is a gratifying one-on-one battle if one side awakens an entire village that would immediately interfere? Curse shot out his outstretched fingers, invoking his lethal yo-yos from their rings. The bladed playthings whizzed through the air and went wildly off course when the separate personality clapped her hands together, activated the elemental seals etched into her finger guards, and then punched a solid blast of wind against the oncoming threat. The blonde caught the fist of air and promptly redirected it back towards Aya, who, in turn, flattened herself against a wall with her chakra-enhanced feet glued to the surface. Naruto swung his arm to recall his yo-yos, while putting a spin on the weaponized toys, hoping to bind the female adversary within the wiring. He swore under his breath when the girl planted her hands against the wall. Then, the engravings within the stocky slips of metal over her digits glowing with divulging patterns, launched herself outwards with blocks of stone following her open palms. Curse's wires wrapped around the manipulated brick outcroppings, and he severed their connection to his rings. Nice one. Iva said smugly, a sly smile behind her mask betraying her joy. Any more like that she's not pissed off? The teen wondered as he dodged one of his yo-yos that was thrown back at him. Is she actively enjoying this fight? That's not the I remember. Let's go, she announced cheerily as she somersaulted off a windowsill and, in the same motion, extracted some of the stone from the ledge via elemental seals. Before her feet touched another surface, her palms pressed together, then flung outwards, tossing a newly formed serrated disc that was once the debris. She broke off the rocky mantle. The blonde decided to end things quickly. The longer the battle went on, the higher the risk of discovery. He reached back, unsealed his heavily modified ninjato, and fell back into a defensive stance on the ledge of roof on which he was perched. With a flick of the wrist and a push of chakra, the extensively engraved blade glowed momentarily as it clashed with the impromptu buzzsaw before shattering the oncoming gyre into 1,000 pebbles. "All right, Aya," he challenged, "let's do it." His lips parted in a joyous grin, an action he hoped would antagonize the alter ego smirking behind her mask. The separate personality leapt through the air in wide graceful arcs, touching off specific surfaces to increase her velocity, as well as randomize her trajectory. She traveled so swiftly that, at one point, she began feeling lightheaded as dizziness washed over her. But she shook it off and continued forward in Curse's general direction, with finger guards blazing with elemental seals in preparation for anything. The strategizing portion of Aya's mind knew a frontal assault would be suicide. However, her urge to come into physical contact with the blonde overwhelmed her intuition. Besides, she analyzed, he won't kill me. She landed mere feet away from her target and noticed the lambent sword thrusting towards her. Instincts kicked in, and she continued the force built up from her rapid approach by leaping